Well, up with the Cummings. It is Tuesday, our official show date, Tuesday, 4 p.m. Mountain Time.
Yeah.
We had a little to do on, we call it our Sun Dunker. And every so often we do that. We like to make a video out of the blue, just to share how we're feeling and to feel how we're sharing.
Because it's fun.
Yes, it is. And, this is one of the greatest vehicles for sharing one's feelings and emotions. And sometimes, even though some channels may not be very popular, I don't think ours is that popular anymore, but it's good to reach out to certain people and those that watch that feel a connection and whatever we may be able to help you. This is what we do it for.
Yeah, it's really important to just be able to be honest about the things that we face as a trans couple, but also just as human beings. We live on this earth, and everybody always has something that they're dealing with, and we're no different than you guys, and we make mistakes just like everyone else, but it's just nice to be able to just be human.
It's part of growth. I mean, the only constant in life, in my humble opinion, is change. Things never remain the same. People change the way they feel, they think. Some of us take a little longer than others to learn. We keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again, and it's part of the human experience. I like to think that our failed detransition taught us a lot of things, and I'm sure that a lot of you out there have played with the thought of, did I make a mistake? Is this really what I thought this would be? And that's normal.
Yeah, it's very normal to question yourself and to ask these, really deep questions that really, they get to the heart of who you are as a person. And stumbling around in the dark and making mistakes is also a part of the process. I mean, how many times have I been told the story of Thomas Edison discovering the light bulb, and just how many times he got it wrong before one time he was able to get it right, and the rest is history.
Well, everyone's journey is unique and it's different, and we all have different reasons why we transition, and we all have different reasons why we feel that we halt our transition, we worry about things, we try to be people pleasers. We're dealing with childhood traumas, we're dealing with neurological impairments, we're dealing with self-loathing, we're dealing with body image issues. I mean, I'm pretty sure, and if we all could be honest, the majority of trans people, we all have some form of either eating disorder. We didn't like the way we looked, either we were too overweight, we just, whatever issue led us to come to where we are today is all based on self-image.
Yeah, and it's really something that's very individualistic, and it's something that, no one else is going to be able to journey the journey that you're on. Everybody's journey looks different. Everybody's family, levels of acceptance and rejection and living situation, job situation, career choice, it's family choice. It's all very different. And, we have so many different roads where we all come from, and the path isn't always the same,
And I believe that's one of the reasons the community has the inability to connect as a whole, because we all have different challenges and we all have different demons that we're fighting. But one of the things that I'm very positive, and in my opinion, that most of us are missing, in this journey, is keeping focus on our health and our mental well-being.
And one of the most crucial things that we, really strongly advocate against is in the use of synthetic hormones because of the fact that, I mean, I don't know, I think an older generation of trans people understood the dangers of Premarin, of these types of estrogens and stuff that were being sold and prescribed to trans women back in the day.
Yeah, they did, but they didn't find that out right away, because we all, like, we follow a path and we're like a blind person, not really knowing where the next step is, and hoping that our cane will get us, or that blind stick will lead us in the right direction. Unfortunately, a lot of older trans women aren't here with us today because of the hormones they were on, because of the cancers that they had from taking these substances. A lot of them were murdered. I mean, there's, a lot of mistakes were made. And I think that it's important that the younger generation learns from the older generation and to realize that it doesn't matter what substance you're taking. That substance is not what's making you you. What's making you you is you. Mm-hmm. Bottom line. And as I mentioned the other day, if you need to do this, and I know a lot of people really do need to do this, go in and out as quickly as possible. Do the least amount of damage that you could possibly do. And I know a lot of you don't agree with the fact that you think that hormones aren't dangerous. You think a lot of you think that hormones are safe. And there is not one single substance that is made from big pharma that is safe. And if you don't believe me, just look at commercials and see the side effects.
I mean, I think one of the reasons that Spiro became a prescription for trans women is because of the fact that Premarin was causing so much cancer that they had to find something in order to lower the levels of prescribed estrogen.
Right.
So they came up with this concept of having a testosterone blocker,
Right.
so that this dangerous synthetic estrogen wouldn't wreak so much havoc,
right.
And it doesn't matter though because it still has.
Oh my gosh! It used to be a medication for the heart that got discontinued because it was damaging.
Oh, Spiro,
yeah, Spiro, and even cis women have had lots and lots of issue with estrogen. And don't get fooled by the word bioidentical. A lot of people think that they're safe by taking bioidentical hormone. It doesn't mean that they have no synthetic in them. It's just a cleaner process, but it's not bioidentical. Bioidentical would mean that your own body is producing it. They're taking this material and turning it into a substance for you to ingest. And it's not free from danger. On the contrary, it does the same exact thing. I mean, but again, we're not going to preach to you all what you want and don't want to take, what you should or should not take. We just want to inform people, and those that want to heed the information, look into it, and decide for themselves if it's something that they want to do, then so be it. But please don't be in the understanding that if you're not on hormones, you're less of a trans person, or you're less of the person that you feel that you are, because hormones don't make a man or a woman. Heart and soul and your spirit is what makes you you. Now, I wanted to really share some of the incredible transformation that you, Lynn, and my wife have made in the 3 years' time that you and I have been together. And your journey, is something that is very extremely, in my opinion, what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiring, totally inspiring for anyone out there that wishes to transition. And Lena, you were barely on hormones. You might have been on hormones probably 2.5 years in an interrupted fashion.
Yeah.
And as a trans woman, I'm sure you have a lot of insight to speak to your sisters out there that think that they need the substance to really make them who they are. And in fact, we could show some of the pictures here. When you were on estrogen, it seemed to me that you were less of the woman that you are appearing, or the presentation as a woman that you feel you are inside. So if you want to talk about that while I share the pictures here.
It's been of discovery the past, and taking this journey has really been an eye-opener for being more so than it has a woman or as a man or whatever. It's been a journey of you know, making hard, tough decisions to make some radical changes in my life that, yes, included gender transition. As you see here, back in 2011, I was attending my nephew's college graduation, and I weighed a portly 230 pounds. I was bald. I was not healthy. I was eating the wrong kinds of food. I was fast tracked to look just like my cousins. I look at pictures of them. I see pictures that I went to school with, that I went to high school with, and they have aged precipitously. I mean, in a way that, regardless of if you've taken this journey as I have as a transgender woman or not, and you've remained as a regular person, it's really sad because they choose to keep the current path of where they're going in their life, and it leads to so much what
destruction, aging,
yeah.
deterioration. I mean, people don't realize that what you put in your body makes a tremendous difference in how your body is going to react from a very small cell that is responsible for every function in your body. I mean, you have specific cells in your lungs, in your kidneys, in your liver, in your skin, in your heart, and the cells all work together. And if you're polluting your cells, you're going to be polluting your mind and your body, and you're not going to be as optimally healthy and young as you possibly could be. I mean, if you look at your picture on the left here and the picture on the right, which we took yesterday, actually,
you took it.
Yeah, I took it yesterday. You were weighing 230 pounds in 2011. Right now, you're weighing 152 pounds. You're leaner than you've ever been. Now, you tried losing weight. And here's some more pictures. You tried losing weight on your own.
I did. I mean, unsuccessfully. Typically the yo-yo diet is something that, that everybody goes on, that yo-yoing. That's back in 2004. I thought, that I was doing fine for myself. I was, gosh, I think I hadn't even started the Atkins diet yet, but that was in October of 2004. And, I mean, it is what it is. And this was just last year.
Right. And even from last year to now, there's been a massive difference because people don't realize you don't lose weight overnight. And if you do, you're doing it wrong because then you're messing with your metabolism. I had to take Lena from the very beginning. I mean, from not only an accident that she had, which we'll be discussing a little bit, but changing her metabolism, changing the genetics in her body.
I was so proud. I was running and everything, and I had lost. That was a size 36 waist pant, and I was so excited that I was losing weight.
But what happened? You ended up gaining the weight all back again.
After I had been running for a while, I stopped running and rollerblading because the winter was so bad in Minnesota. And after the accident, I was at 200 pounds again.
January
14, but paunchy. I had wider. My arms had no definition whatsoever. I mean, it was like.
Oh, we seem to have lost the picture here. Let's see, it's back. And there you were at the Drifter when just a few weeks from the accident.
We had met, and I was recovering from that horrible car accident, and I was still pretty wide around the waist.
And here on your left, when you have your little estrogen patches, a lot of trans women don't understand estrogen will make you fat. That's just, there's no if, and, or buts about it. I mean, it's a hormone that was created for women to create fat so they
think of a cow. When a cow is pregnant, it is producing milk, and it is obviously
overweight, fatter. You have to be. That's part of what that hormone does.
Yeah.
Now on the right here is when we were living in the RV, and we had
April
to finish.
2015.
And we had to finish doing a water fast.
Yeah.
Actually, and you dropped a lot of weight, but still no definition. Look at your waist, and there was still a lot of healing, metabolic healing that I had to do. I don't remember.
That was April of 2016 when we were at a bar. Remember your friend Danny?
Oh, okay.
And I took pictures in the meantime there, and I was proud of myself because I had lost a considerable amount of weight.
Yeah, I mean from 230, you were probably, you got.
That's 2007.
Yeah.
I was, just a husky kid, a husky guy.
Yeah. And there you had lost some weight.
Yep. I had lost some weight because I had done the Atkins diet. But, just because you look good with pants and shirt on doesn't mean that you look good underneath. Because if you were to look at that picture, if you were to look at that old picture of,
let me go back. Down right
there. Before that.
Before that?
Yeah. If you were to look at me there, I mean, underneath that was a person who was still out of shape, not defined at all.
Oh, that's
and then, this was in 2014 when I had transitioned.
What, this one?
Yeah. And I was at
if you look at your stomach, still, not defined. Your arms are defined.
Yeah.
You still have a lot of, fat. And, a lot of people don't realize that weight loss is not what you all would think weight loss is. I mean, right here, we're looking at the innie now has become an outie.
Yeah.
There is, look at your waist. You can't really make justice on this picture because we fasted Sunday. We did a 24-hour fast, and the glycogen was depleted, but normally your abs are pretty well defined.
Yeah.
But even so, I mean, you could tell that there's, your waist is different, your arms have plenty of definition.
Yeah, I can see definition on that left arm there. I was looking at my triceps just today when we were doing stretches.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, there's muscle there that I hadn't seen before. This definition there.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen.
So.
And I haven't been on hormones since
July of
2017, but very happy with my derriere right now because it's just, I'm very content with what's taking place.
And myself here, I was pretty overweight in my late 30s, and I transitioned when I was 38. And, I always had this gut, and I was pretty big breasted, and you see my arms in no definition. I was definitely very estrogen dominant. And, now at 53, no hormones, everything natural. I feel that I'm heading in the right direction, and I feel that I'm going to take my body to levels that I never thought were possible, So,
and it's exciting to see because I can see the changes and the upping of the weight that you've done at the gym, and all this is a combination of just what we're able to do with our bodies. If we allow ourselves to work hard and to do the hard thing and to just, drop, for me, it's like drop the pink 2-pound barbells or dumbbells and stuff and just get out there and shred and tear muscle while I'm working out,
Exactly.
I mean.
And not to fear the muscle because, as many trans women are finding out for themselves, those that have had the full SRS or even the orchiectomy, that your hormones will flatline and your hormones will get to the point where your health will be diminished because you don't have a healthy hormonal profile. And too much estrogen, whether it's a cis woman or whether it's a trans woman, will lead to a lot of health issues. Too much testosterone in an FTM will convert into estrogen, and that is what causes the problem. Too much estrogen in an MTF will convert into testosterone because your body's trying to find that happy medium balance, and you will start meeting with a lot of health issues.
And if you've had the SRS surgery, now you have nothing to go with, and that's something that you need as you age. I mean, a lot of you young trans women who are thinking about getting SRS in the future, I understand. I know exactly how you feel that you need it, that you want it, that it's part of what will make you into what you believe you are. But you need to also look at the future. You need to look at what happens when you age and what happens, when your body starts to break down. What do you need in your body when your body starts to break down?
Health is very important. Hello, Nicole. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, health is extremely important. And I know when you're younger, you don't think about health. I mean, I used to think I was invincible when I was younger, and I'm sure you did too.
Yeah.
And the whole concept do or die. But when you get sick and you're death, because death is easy. When you die, you die. You don't feel anything. You're gone. But living with a disorder, living with a disease, living with an inability, if you get a stroke, if you get a heart attack when you're no longer functioning the way that you're used to functioning, then there's no fun anymore. You can't go out dancing at night and drinking and wearing your heels and doing all the things that you like to do, because now you're bedridden, you're sick, you're tired, that's no fun. So the concept is to try to keep it balanced, where you're worried about your health, you're taking care of your body. If you're on these toxic hormones, please do it for the shortest amount of time that you could possibly do it for, and then get on something natural.
And I mean, we understand that you want the changes to happen, and those of you who are FTMs and stuff, I mean, you have the greatest opportunity with synthetic testosterone, and your voice changes and your body changes in ways that you would never have imagined, and everything. The differences are more subtle for trans women, even young trans women. They end up always having to adapt and having to enhance things and to have FFS so many times and these different things. But I mean, for an FTM, it's like get in and get out. I mean, for a young trans woman, it's like get in, but don't stay there, because the longer you let your body, just have these foreign substances in your body, the more dangers you pose for yourself. I mean, testosterone is 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 a bad word a lot of times for trans women to hear, and they call the testicles, tumors and all that stuff. But the truth of the matter is that what are men and women given to renew their health and to regenerate? I mean, what were you taking, like when you were a female bodybuilder? I mean,
growth hormone, and androgens and
what and
testosterone.
Yeah,
testosterone.
Men are given that as well, and testosterone is not a bad thing. And to be able to have an ability to produce testosterone as you age, and to be able to have it not in over demanded ways, but in a way that is healthy for the type of body that you have.
And notice the fact that as we age, your typical male, their testosterone level decreases. So, trying to run away from testosterone, wanting to get rid of it completely, is shooting yourself in the foot, because it is a hormone that's very much needed. And I know there's a lot of trans women that actually have had to have testosterone prescribed as SRS because they need it. They need it. So where you could balance these things out in a healthy fashion, where your health is optimal, where your mental health is optimal, accepting yourself and realizing who you truly are, and just expressing and trying to be as happy as you can be, because trying to reach certain things in life that are basically impossible will only lead to disappointment, frustration, anger, and all these negative feelings.
And trying to accomplish it synthetically is pretty much a no-win, for your health, for your mental wellness, and for your overall satisfaction. It's better to be able to be satisfied and happy with the person that you are that doesn't need all these other things to supplement them in order for them to be who they are. You know,
realize that everybody's body type is different. There are women that are big bone. I mean, I've seen a lot of women that are 6'2", and the NBA, the women's basketball team is full of them. Hockey, the hockey team. You know, look at the Olympics. There are women that some women are bigger. You know, and the same thing goes for men. There's some men that I've seen guys shorter than me. You know, and more petite than me. You know, it's like we can't sit there and create these false images in our minds and wanting to look a certain way because we're going to hurt ourselves. And this goes not just for trans people. How many regular people out there, they look at the TV, they look at these models, and they want to be like them. They starve themselves. They create eating disorders, which the majority of us trans individuals have. We have a body dysmorphic disorder. We don't like what a lot of us starve ourselves to death. I used to be bulimic, anorexic. I had the worst relationship with food. It took me so many years to get rid of that.
And, you know, it goes for not just trans people, but, you know, for people in general. And, you know, they go to the gym, they see somebody, or they get a workout video and they see somebody that they want to emulate on YouTube or whatever, and come to realize that their genetics aren't the same as the CrossFit women or the CrossFit men. I mean, their body is designed to get them to a certain level, and after that, it's like you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Like, I mean, you do what you can with the genetics you've been given, and then you work your butt off.
And you can change a little bit of genetics. I mean, you can, because there is coding that you have to be realistic. And you have to be gentle, because if not, you're just going to mess yourself up. You pretty much
based your success on another person, you know, because if you do, that's where you set yourself up for failure. You know,
it's pretty sad. I don't know if I should lower the density because we keep coming in and out, and make the high density lower bandwidth. We'll keep trolling along. Anyway, we wanted to talk today about a lot of these pharmacies online that are sketchy pharmacies, and unfortunately, a lot of trans people are utilizing these resources to get their hormones. And guys, you really don't know what you're getting when you shop online like that. And I know it's scary to go to doctors. I personally don't like going to doctors. I'm so grateful that I'm not on hormones anymore, that I don't have to deal with it. You have to come every 6 months and get blood work, and they really don't know what they're doing. A lot of trans people have either died from a heart attack, have had strokes, and yet they were still under doctor's care. So what was the whole purpose of this?
I think, you know, that doctor that you had an argument with last time we were at the doctor's in Fort Lauderdale, she wanted you to come back every 3 months.
And I'm like, lady, I've been doing this since 2003.
And she was unwilling. I mean, it got to the point where we requested for Dr. Zayas to come in, you know, because it was like, this woman is just like incorrigible. She's not willing to give you
but that's the medical community. That's why I highly and strongly advise for people to try to do this the natural route if you possibly can. You know, with trans women, is losing weight. Once you lose your weight and you work out and you really change your body composition, you're going to see a lot of changes occurring. You know, and you also have to look at your age. You know, if you're 60 years old, you can't really expect a lot of changes, even with synthetic hormones. I mean, they're not miracle drugs. So you have to be realistic in your goals and look at your health before anything else. So anyway, this particular
pharmacy type article, you know, I can personally relate to, because back in September of 2016, we both were detransitioning, and you know, we got rid of stuff, and once I transitioned back again a month later, a month and a half later.
This was before we went on our journey.
September of 2016. I was looking for hormones to be able to use and be able to get back on a regimen, and I had none. So I was looking around, and I found this trans women group on Facebook that, they were all talking about hormones and where to get them and what dosage, and everything was like off, you know, what is it? Not like under a doctor's
Right.
supervision.
Yeah.
So I ended up ordering from a company and getting some hormones. And it was like, oh my gosh, we don't know where they come from.
Exactly.
We don't know what condition they were in. We don't know what's in the vials. They tout themselves as being, like medical companies, but we don't know if they're just like people that just work in some of overseas country that, are just filling.
You don't know what
orders,
they're putting in there. You really don't
know
know what substances you're getting. It's just like when bodybuilding scene that you get stuff, in the black market. You didn't know what you're getting. It's one of those things. And not that the pharmaceutical grade one is any better, because they're all synthetic. They're all bad stuff. Recognize the online stuff is even scarier. So we wanted to share this article with you guys. 2 years ago at Burning Man, Andrea tripped on a ayahuasca, which is an herb of sorts that shamans use to awaken individuals and help heal them, and had visions of herself as a woman in a past life. At the time, Andrea, 33-year-old transgender woman, identified as a man, but she had struggled with gender dysphoria since high school. Growing up, quote, I had no transgender role models, she says, and there was nobody to tell me that what I felt was something anyone else had, she says. I was unhappy with how I was living, and I really wish I had been born with a female body.
After meeting a few transgender women at the famed Music and Arts Festival, Andrea decided to pursue her own transition. But when she sought out feminizing hormones through clinics around her home in Philadelphia, she ran into lengthy waiting lists and high costs. So she decided to experiment on her own. She ordered estradiol, a commonly prescribed form of estrogen, and spironolactone, a testosterone blocker traditionally prescribed to transgender women from an online pharmacy without a prescription.
Andrew's decision to manage her own transition outside of a doctor's care is common. With a lack of transgender-related services across the country, as well as discrimination from the medical professionals and insurance companies, many transgender patients are conducting their own hormone replacement therapy, a regimen of medication meant to help them develop some of the secondary sexual characteristics of their gender identity.
Online forums and blogs, like the ones that I had visited on Facebook, devoted to do-it-yourself, DIY, HRT, hormone replacement therapy, help transgender people access drugs that are typically meant to be guarded by a doctor's prescription and certified pharmacies. The website's members recommend of dubious legality and help each other navigate shipping and possessing such drugs. They monitor their own blood results and manage each other's side effects, all without the oversight of a doctor. Because of the legal questions around these practices, we agreed on this article not to identify the full names of some individuals we spoke to for this story.
For Andrea, the do-it-yourself method was only a stepping stone towards a doctor-managed approach, but she may return to do-it-yourself to retain the independence and control it gave her. She says, it's not fun to be dependent on having sympathetic doctors around money prescription.
My initial goal was to try a few weeks supply and see how it felt from there, says Adam, a member of r/trans DIY, without insurance coverage to affordably and legally pursue a trans. However, Adam ended up for a number of months and monitored the close observation of lab results and online research into the side effects of the different hormones. r/trans DIY links users to pharmacies, labs, and clinical guidelines of the Endocrine Society. Numerous posts detail a guide to DIY, quote unquote, and Ellie's awesome DIY guide, quote unquote, offering advice on medications and proper dosages. I am not a doctor, and this is not medical advice, clarifies one tutorial. This is all stuff I've pieced together from a combination of personal experience. Remember back when I was starting to transition, there were so many tranny chasers out there that had of what a trans woman were constantly kind of breaking up here. They were constantly like telling me, here, let me email you this list of things that you need to do. You need to get this or that, and it was something common. That's what kind of people did.
But people have to realize that in the so-called medical professional guidance, they're really not, or it's like the blind leading the blind, are still not very well understood, are still in their infancy state of how the body reacts. You can't take blood work and be certain that that blood work is. Hormone levels go up and down on a daily basis. Tell if something's free flowing, something's, it's very inadequate science.
It's that trans women who a lot tend to be like they would have wanted to have done that themselves, but it's more isn't better.
No, it's not. And really, putting some sort of medication inside your body really is gambling with your health tremendously. Anyway, estradiol and spironolactone are the most popular drugs for transgender women to increase estrogen and decrease testosterone, respectively. Develop softer skin, feminine fat distribution in the face and body and breasts. Transgender men are typically prescribed depot testosterone, regular consumption of which helps them develop muscle, body hair, and a deeper voice. While estradiol and spironolactone can be acquired at numerous online pharmacies, most forms of testosterone are regulated as a steroid by both the Controlled Substance Act of Anabolic Steroid Control Act of 1990, meaning most DUIs are transgender women. And that points out a red flag. Why is it that testosterone, the anabolic version, which is supposed to be building, think about it, anabolic, not catabolic. Estrogen is catabolic. And testosterone anabolic, it builds you, it builds your immune system, builds your strength. It's against the law. But heck, the other stuff, they're like, it's not against the law to do that. Why is that? Women that are estrogen dominant typically are very sick, very overweight. So trans women are really, and I understand totally why you want to do what you want to do, but realize that you are placing yourself at risk,
Catherine Sterling, a woman who sought hormones online, describes how it's incredibly hard, quote unquote, to access them through traditional channels. After obtaining insurance that would cover HRT, she kept getting the same kinds of issues she wrote to me in an email. Either they wouldn't work with my insurance and hence declined to have me as a patient, didn't know enough about transgender HRT to even consider me, kept bouncing me around to different clinics, or just told me to see a therapist or anything else because they didn't know what I needed. Months after pursuing HRT through doctors, Catherine says she found herself stuck with off-prescription medications she obtained online because it was at times I would literally be brought to tears over being rejected so much. I didn't experience those types of things because when I transitioned, I remember my therapist recommended me to go to a GP, and I was prescribed my hormones. They gave me, full, kind of that whole protocol thing. And I didn't have any problem getting insurance. I didn't have any problem with prescriptions or anything like that. So I'm not sure. I've heard that there are problems like that.
Depending where you're living at. But, the short period of time that you were on hormones, which was, less than 3 years, and now that you are on herbals, tell people how you feel because I think it's very important. Let me see how much more. I'll have you answer that after we finish this article. I think it's important that people realize that there is a natural way of healthier way, and I think that you could have a lot of influence on your trans sisters and really help them, you know, take a path that is going to be a lot healthier for them. According to, is it my turn or your turn?
Sure.
Okay, according to Joshua Safer, the medical director of Boston University Center for Transgender Medicine and Surgery, Catherine's story is common. Quote, the big roadblocks are lack of providers who have been willing to provide the treatment in the first place and lack of financial support, unquote. He says, quote, it's still the case in much of the country that transgender individuals will reach out to their existing illogical providers and are told, I don't do that. I won't prescribe you those hormones. I don't feel comfortable, unquote. And it's true because they're putting their license in danger. They really don't know much about it. There's a lot of controversy when it comes to synthetic hormones, even though it's kept in a hush hush, especially in the trans community. They don't want to hear it, but it is fact.
Safer believes this hesitance is less a matter of malice than it is a matter of ignorance. Still, he sees discrimination as an enormous problem within the medical community. He admitted to hearing snide jokes and honest hostile opinions of transgender patients from his colleagues. There are still providers with outright hostility, he says. I have a patient who reported coming in for a broken limb to an emergency room and being sent out of the emergency room because the doctors determined they were trans, which is entirely unrelated to the situation.
Now, one poster on the DIY subreddit told me that a doctor turned them down for HRT to avoid being legally responsible for the transition. Another reflected on living in the southern United States, where trans healthcare is non-existent and 9 out of 10 doctors are overly hostile and antagonist towards trans patients. A study by the National Center for Trans and the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, 28% of respondents said they avoided medical care because of discrimination from a medical professional, and 19% reported being refused medical care because of their gender identity. 50% said they had to teach their doctors about appropriate care, one reason some people may feel confident enough to manage their own transition.
Now, I do understand what they're saying, and that may have been the case in other southern states, but in the state of Tennessee, I just wanted to go on record as saying that I was absolutely blown away with um, the ability to be able to transition in a state that basically on their constitution, their state constitution, they will not allow a citizen of that state, a person who was born in that state, right, to change their gender marker. But when I went to do my driver's license, no problem. I mean, I wasn't from that state, but when I went to try to get hormones and talk to doctors and stuff, no problem. There aren't that many that do it, but if you went through the right channels, things would be taken care of. And 10 care
All right, and we're back. We had a little failure there with our what you take it online. It's modern world of technology. Okay, so
I don't know where we cut out.
probably the last thing that we were talking about. Um, a lot of people just don't feel confident going to the doctors, and a lot of states we were talking about Tennessee being pretty, open, with even though it's a southern state, you didn't find any problems, and that you were just, you know, totally received you with open arms.
Yeah, it was a positive experience that I had. Was able to successfully get my name changed, in the court, for the gender change and all that. So it was not a problem, but I know that there are many others that don't have the same story, that really struggle in their individual state to be able to get these things taken care of, and it's very important for us as trans men and women.
Yeah.
But a provision in the Affordable Care Act outlaws discrimination against patients on the basis of gender, a rule that Lambda Legal, an LGBT civil rights organization that regularly takes up cases of discrimination, has argued extends to transgender individuals, since HRT is typically covered for women going through menopause. When people need to have access to care and they can't get it, they use any means possible, says Dr. Drew Levasseur, Lambda's Transgender Rights Project Director.
Some states like New York or Massachusetts have begun an initiative to close these gaps, but for now, questionable pharmacies are filling the void left open by the healthcare system. Websites like In-House Pharmacy, All Day Chemist, and Quality Health Incorporated offer by mail delivery of a vast number of drugs that typically require prescription. Taking advantage of dense international shipping and drug laws, these sites sell hormones and many other medications not listed as controlled substance by the Drug Enforcement Administration, though, as the Washington Post has reported, deep web traffickers can help you with that too.
Earlier this year, the Center for Safe Internet Pharmacies surveyed 30,000 online drug sellers. I didn't know there were that many. And found that 96% existed outside of regulations or licenses typically enforced by the Food and Drug Administration, the National Association of Boards of Pharmacies, and the DEA. These rogue sites often sell unapproved drugs that contain the wrong active ingredient, yikes, drugs that may contain too much or too little of the active ingredient, or drugs that contain dangerous ingredients, warns the FDA.
Even if the drug patients do obtain are legitimate and non-counterfeit, many of these pharmacies and manufacturers do not have the same safety standards as the FDA and the U.S. government. That doesn't say much. She adds, citing India, Russia, and Pakistan as some of the more popular pharmacy locations. All Day Chemist and an online pharmacy based in India even has a strict as-is policy, meaning they do not claim 100% certainty about the products they sell. Hormones manufactured and distributed from abroad might be contaminated or kept out of the cold storage, which is necessary to keep them from degrading. Even if you're lucky enough not to get a counterfeit, you don't know the quality of the medicine you get, Bain says.
Simply taking hormones poses health risks, too. Safer, the Boston University professor, notes that estrogen contributes to blood clots and can increase one's chances of stroke or heart disease, as well as put extra strain on the liver. Spironolactone, the most popular testosterone blocker prescribed to transgender women, is a potassium-sparing diuretic, meaning a patient with existing kidney problems might have to restrict their dose or not take the drug at all.
Or may begin to have kidney problems from taking the drug. The illicit drug market has picked up the pieces where the medical system has failed those who want more legitimate care. Some, like Andrea, are happy with the experimental freedom given to them when they control their own gender identity down to the medical option in front of them. But others, like Adam and Catherine, would be delighted to find easy and affordable access to healthcare through safer and more verified channels.
Given the disastrously high suicide rate among transgender people, many thank their DIY hormones for their survival. I started DIY when I lived in a place where healthcare was inaccessible, says one user of /r/ask transgender subreddit. I eventually moved to a place that had legit healthcare options and told them that I was going to keep medding whether they helped me or not. So I got a prescription right away. I would not be alive right now if I had not started when I did.
Yeah, I want to interject in this particular comment, and I think it's pretty sad, and I understand it. You know, I understand the desperate need, the wanting to pull the suicide card out, and I'm not legitimizing it in any way or form or fashion, but we need to stop spreading this. We need to stop allowing that to be an option for people. We need to empower people with stronger coping skills and more self-love. That if you don't get your hormones, that doesn't mean you're going to die. That means that you just have to be a little more patient. It means that you have to do a little more work on yourself as an individual and bring out those things in you that you feel you have inside. Hormones ain't going to bring that out. Okay, what's going to bring that out is you doing work with you, finding peace within yourself, realizing that there are other ways for you to be you, and do not rely on a chemical substance that could kill you, that could destroy your life. I mean, it's so important that the younger generation learns to have coping skills, learns to understand that patience is a virtue. You know, Rome was not built in a day. Like we showed your body from when you were 230 pounds, your journey. And your journey was not based on hormones.
It wasn't. I mean, I remember early on in my transition, someone asked me advice and stuff, and I said, you know, the you that you want to be is not the you that, you know, that you manufacture. It's the you that you are. And it comes from the well inside of you. It starts from inside. You can't just like paint something a different color and then expect it to be, you know, a good thing. I mean, you have to, you know, exude it. You know, you don't like try to bring it on, you know, from the outside, no matter if you want to like have facial feminization surgery or SRS or, I mean, all the different things, or hormone replacement therapy. I mean, it's important to realize that these things are adjuncts, not gateways to becoming who you are, because you already are who you are.
Yeah, either you are who you are or you're not who you are. If you have to do so much work to present to the world who you say you are, then are you who you say you are really? Is it worth some of your, you know, inner needs to destroy the vehicle that you are trying to preserve so that you can live a happy life? And I know it's hard. I understand it. My God, I've been there, done that. I'm 53 years old. You know, I've been around a lot of trans people. I've seen the suffering and the pain. You know, I've lived with a person now for 3 years, and I've seen the roller coaster ride. But, you know, it's like, did hormones make you who you are? I mean, you're off of hormones. You're going to be off of hormones almost a year now. And since you have learned to look at things differently, you know, explain to our viewers, you know, what do you feel that synthetic hormones did anything for you?
I personally, you know, as you age, as you get older, I mean, perhaps some people find benefit from it after the age of 30, but for the majority of people, you know, like me, there really isn't that much of an upside to taking hormones, other than, you know, getting fat. You know, you'll get fat. That's for sure. You can develop some breast development. I never got any, but you can develop some breast development, and some fat could shift around a bit. But, you know, for the most part, it's something that has very little benefits, you know. And, you know, if you're like 18, even that one couple that was all being marketed on the media back, maybe it was like 2013 or something like that. A young trans couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, trans man, trans woman. I remember her talking about the effects of HRT. And she's like, the effects are really just subtle. Yeah. They're not really all that.
And after 2 years, it's almost like it halts, and then you start getting anxiety. We've heard of a lot of the younger MTFs that have really gotten really bad anxiety from taking estradiol for long periods of time. You have to just look at the physiology, what their body's doing with the stuff that you're putting inside. How do you feel now on the herbs that you're on, which is saw palmetto, which is it's the natural form of spiro, really, and it's given to men to prevent prostate cancer, to stop the excess amount of testosterone. And you've been on fenugreek and you've been on red clover.
Yeah, I mean, with the saw palmetto, I've noticed that, when I wasn't on it, that body odor would come back and stuff. The hair growth would come back a little bit more. But ever since getting onto saw palmetto, it's reduced that. I hardly have to shave my arms at all. And also, just the overall, sense. It's not like something that raises your cortisol levels like Spiro did. It doesn't make you, depressed or anything like
mood
that.
Swings,
mood swings. And red clover is something that, I'm just kind of experimenting with. Red clover or fenugreek, I was on both, but a lot of times being on both is counterproductive because more isn't better, and they could counter each other.
I've read that they do.
And, there are a number of different herbal remedies that are absolutely safe for you to take. Even Suma is being recommended to trans women as well, because
it's an adaptogen,
a form of progesterone or something that allows, for different things as well that, progesterone would be doing naturally. But, it's one of those things where there are options for you. There are remedies for you that don't involve hurting yourself, and I have been off of estrogen since July, like you said, almost a year, and I've never felt better in my life. I've lost a ton of weight because I think what happened was that although I was working out, although we were vegan, and we were kind of high-fat vegans a little bit, although all that was taking place, the estrogen was fighting me.
And I would always tell you that.
It was like,
you're like, oh, whatever, work with what you got. And I'm like, okay, but trust me, you ain't, it's not, you can never get optimally in the shape that you want when you have estrogen. I would always tell my clients, gosh, if I get a little testosterone in you, we would be in business, because, estrogen it makes you fat. It makes your metabolism sluggish. It makes you hungry. It's just,
and estrogen is being produced as people like me age. We're naturally transitioning from going from a more testosterone-based, hormone flow, and adapting to a more estrogen-based flow.
And we've had shows about this, that in biologically born male, as it is when they age, their estrogen level goes up, and they're in danger of having estrogen dominance, where they get the cancers and they get the depressions and the mood swings and all these things, because it's
and physically they start manifesting with man boobs and things like that, and they start getting in, like you said, the depressive things and stuff like that. But it's all a natural. So you work with what your body's already progressing itself to doing as you age.
Exactly.
You enhance with these natural, herbal supplements that really can help you, and you don't hurt yourself in the process. It's a win-win.
It's much more natural,
and
much more gentler, much more gentler. And also, diet is very important. Plant-based diet, I find, it really helps dramatically. I think that all trans women should get on a plant-based diet. be able to decrease your estrogen intake, your body will automatically start producing more estrogen. You know, and you will,
natural phytoestrogens are occurring inside the vegetables and grains and things that you eat, and that helps you as well.
And I find myself, I mean, I started messing with androgens from the time, I think it was like 1998, 1999, and till I stopped taking all sorts of hormones in July of last year. I have no ovaries, so I've got nothing producing anything. Although a biological born female, our bodies automatically start producing androgen, whether it's from your adrenal glands, from your pituitary glands, the body starts doing it. So I know that even though I have no ovaries, my body is producing some form of testosterone. Adding the suma to that mix is what's allowed me, to feel healthy, to have strength, to see my body composition, as the pictures that I showed you earlier. I mean, I always had that little pouch, and for the first time, I'm seeing myself. I mean, even as much as I'm eating, my pants are getting looser. My midsection is really toning up, and I'm 53 years old. So if I could do this, I know that all of you out there, especially the young trans guys, get in, get out, do it for a couple of years, let your body change, and then get on something natural like Suma. I highly recommend. There's Siberian ginseng. There's just so many stuff out there that will work with your own body, and you will get the androgen you need. It's important for you to train very hard. We lift heavy. Heavy lifting is important, and very good posturing while you're working out, really getting serious in what you're doing, and optimally intermittent fasting, which is something that we do. We don't eat till like 1:30. We train on an empty stomach.
We go with a 16-8 window, so basically from 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 9, we eat twice a day. We don't snack. We just eat right after the workout, fill ourselves up with some really good grains, oatmeal, apples and bananas and berries and things like that. And
protein
then
powder from plant-based.
It fills us up, and we don't need to snack.
No.
We don't need to eat anything until after the show's over right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to make a dinner that's going to include a big hefty serving of vegetables and, and more grains and stuff. And that'll carry us over.
Potatoes,
and it'll carry us over into our workout regimen the next day. And we've adapted back into doing urine therapy. I know it's controversial for some and gross, but that's what works. That is what has been working for us. And, that's something that
keeps your hormones very regulated, keeps you slim, keeps your metabolism going. I mean, it's an adaptogen. Your body knows what it needs. So it's a feedback loop. So yeah, it's important to really take a look, at your health and your goals and realize what you're doing. Don't just base everything on a flight or fight response, which I find that's a lot of what trans individuals do. It's a flight or fight, do things from a calmer place. There's a little article that I found, and this is like the second wrestler that I've seen in controversy. This one is high school wrestler in Ohio is outed and embarrassed by their coach. Wilmington High School wrestler Aiden Pogue Krembacher was outed as transgender by his high school coach, Kelly Tolliver, who went on to belittle the team and forced them to change in the girls' locker room.
This, according to his mother, who spoke with Ohio Fox affiliate WFIX. Pogue Krembacher, a freshman, has been transitioning since he was in the 6th grade and still known as Aubrey. He is approximately 70% through his transition period and was never questioned about joining the boys' wrestling team.
Then once he was part of the team, Tolliver allegedly insisted that Pogue Krembacher was a girl in front of the entire team, then forced him to change in the girls' locker room.
Not only did Coach Tolliver announce to the entire team that Aiden is transgender, he publicly humiliated him in front of his classmates with privileged medical information he had no business sharing, Pogue Krembacher's mother told Wilmington school board needs.
Well, the school district is investigating the claims made against Oliver. He has yet to take any action against him. That's crazy. And then the schools say they're not discriminating against anyone. They're not talking much about it till the investigation is done and over with.
It's just the bottom line is that so many people don't understand why we do what we do, why young people are doing what they're doing, why there's this awakening about gender in the younger generation, that they seem to understand the fluidity between male and female and just how that intersects and is able to manifest itself in their understanding, of humans, of human beings, and how they, exist, and that the rules aren't just written in black and white.
It's a form of expression, a form of experimentation. It's energy flowing within us. It's not as simple and black and white as the conservative in the religious sector tried to make it seem, or you're born a boy or a girl, and then, the whole reproductive focus behind sex. I think that there's a lot for people to learn with gender, and a lot for people to learn about themselves through experimenting with gender. And it's nobody's business but one's own, because it is one's journey.
I think it's funny that even though DNA is only a recent discovery, 1956 I think is when they first found DNA strands in humans and stuff, that they were able to identify them, but that so many people that are anti-trans are like, they take this approach of like, oh yeah, well, what's your chromosomes and what's your DNA? And it's like, there's so much DNA in the human body that doctors and researchers know nothing about, yet they're able to just say, oh, what's your chromosome? You don't even know what this is all about anyway. The whole DNA thing, it's like new technology, new understanding, new everything.
And
so
it's uncharted.
It's uncharted, yeah.
And then people have to realize there's something legit going on here where there's so many people. I mean, it's like opening Pandora's box. So many people are now questioning their gender. Why is that? Is there some sort of like evolution that's taking place? Are we awakening as a species? And are we trying to get away from these gender boxes and from this, being honed into a specific category, and you're this or you're that? And that's like so like not true,
Right.
We are trying to evolve as a species, and the religious sector, the political sector, need to stay far, far away from this and just allow humanity to evolve and do what we need to do to make our lives work.
And we talked about it just the other day when we were walking to the post office. We understand that we're different.
Yeah.
We understand that we're not like everybody else. We understand that, there's a category of human that we fit into,
Right.
that does not define the same standards as the other two generalizations.
Exactly.
We are hybrids. We're beautiful hybrids, and we should be proud of that. We should be able to own that distinction. That we do have differences, and we are absolutely beautiful the way we are. We don't have to change anything about us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to mess with our plumbing. We don't have to do anything like that, because we are who we are.
Right.
And there's nothing that's going to take away from the fact how you were born, and there's nothing that's taken away from the fact how I was born. But there's an understanding that there's room for all kinds of people in this world.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of it. What's up with RuPaul in the drag queen world? He's trying to say that only drag queens' title or ability to perform belong to men, and they're the only ones that are able to explore femininity. And it's like RuPaul has been in the controversial limelight before, And it's really funny because he's had a lot of trans women compete in the show, and a lot of once considered gay men have actually transitioned during the time that they were on his show.
Right.
I mean, gender is something to be explored for everyone, and I understand their point of view. They're very territorial about it, so I could relate with both sides. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's an older school of thought that is is predominant, among a certain section of trans people, and it's really an age thing because I mean, if you grew up in an age where you could say the T word and not get in trouble,
Exactly.
you wouldn't get banned like he got banned or something. It's called out. Those types of individuals, the word meant something to them. Drag meant something to RuPaul and others and stuff in a way that it probably doesn't have the same distinction and meaning to a younger generation. And I think that RuPaul, for more than anything else, he's a gay man,
Yeah, he is.
drag performer, and
he feels territorial about it.
Yeah,
Possibly.
I mean he's done a lot for the LGBT community, and his show has been an anchor for so many people. To be able to, like for Carmen Carrera and others to be able to come out and to be able to do what they do and stuff, and to live their lives and live their truth. And I can see where people would say, well, drag is an art form.
It is.
Others would say drag is an expression of gender because that was the only place where they could be themselves.
That was the outlet there.
Right. That was their outlet for being able to be themselves. And the Drag Race show has been very popular
for 10 years.
And there's been, but I think there's room at the table for everybody. I think there's room for trans women. I think there's room for gay men. I think there's room for a person who's just a drag performer to be able to do their thing. But I know that we have differences of opinion with regards to that.
Well, my difference of opinion is because I grew up in actually watching these performances back when I was 17, that I would actually sneak into the bars. I wasn't legal to drink yet. I became very fond of the drag queens. They all kind of like took me in. I was really butchy, and they were always flirting with me, and they were just, at the time, that's what they presented as. They were gay men. Once the drag show was over, a lot of them lived their lives as gay men. So, I'm a little torn between, well, if you're going to transition and present yourself as a woman and you're going to live your life as such, then it's almost like not fair to take away the title or take away the platform for those that are doing it as an art form, as a performance. But at the same time, I could also see that, if somebody wants to express themselves and they're talented and they want to go do this, then they should be able to. But it is his show, and there are his rules, but he should be consistent with those rules. If he's allowed several trans women in there, then he should continue to allow her. He should say, okay, if you identify as trans, but you haven't had the surgery, draw some sort of lines or some sort of barriers so that
there are drag performers that are not trans that will have like a buttock surgery.
A lot of them did,
or breast enhancement.
And they would have some sort of facial feminization. I mean, they do these things to enhance their careers because a lot of them do make this their careers. There are some drag queens that perform in really posh places and they make a good living out of doing this, so they want to be more believable. They want to be able to, but they don't want to be women.
But there are, surgeries like that are very common in the gay man.
Oh, definitely. Gay men. Exactly. They create their higher cheekbones just to create a view, but they don't want to be women. So maybe that's where the
There's the article that I was gonna kind of cite here was in a phone interview with Mike Monday Afternoon magazine. Drag Race's reigning queen Sasha Velour weighed in. She said, "I think a lot of people who've been involved with the show were surprised that we were having the conversation in some ways because Peppermint, who was another trans woman who made it on that show, had succeeded on season 9, been so welcomed, not just by other contestants, but by the show itself." By RuPaul, Velour said, "I think Drag Race has made an effort to be increasingly trans inclusive, so it was surprising to see something that seemed to suggest a different situation." According to The Guardian, Rue argued that Peppermint was eligible for Drag Race because she didn't get breast implants until after she left the show.
And I think right there, where the whole thing became a problem is the person had SRS. And that's where they're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Though she was disappointed in Rue's comment, Velour said she was also concerned about the repercussions they've had on future Drag Race hopefuls. Quote, "I was worried that people would just not audition for the next season. The trans women and non-binary contestants would not audition anymore," Velour said, "because I know Drag Race wants them to audition. That's the truth of the matter," unquote.
Velour implied that there was a difference between Rue's views and those of the drag community at large in this case. "I'm an optimistic person, so I would like to say most people working in drag understand that the community and the history has always been about many different genders," she said. "Trans people, AFAB people, assigned female at birth people, non-binary people have all been part of the tapestry of drag since the beginning. In fact, sometimes it's been mostly those people, not cis men, and I think we all want to fight to keep that the case."
Yeah, definitely. But RuPaul has been a target of the trans community for some time now, and there obviously is some sort of bad blood, and I think people need to learn to forgive, forget, have some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Leniency towards certain people, and I get so flustered and angered and frustrated over things that really do not matter. I mean, we're dealing with an administration right now that we have to worry more so about than fight amongst each other, because that's what they want. They want us to fight amongst each other so that we get weakened and they can tear us all down. And that's not good. So what does the Bible teach about transgender people?
Well, I'm sure there's lots of people who would want to tell us what the Bible says.
Mm-hmm. On February 18th, the Kansas Republican Party passed an unusual anti-transgender resolution that is more theology than politics. Proposed by Eric Hitzel, that's an interesting last name, head of the Kansas chapter of the Family Policy Alliance, the political arm of Christian rights behemoth, focus on the family. Behemoth, what was that? Behemoth, focus on the family.
Giant.
Okay, it's part of the national strategy to delegitimize transgender people and the concept of transgender itself, all on religious grounds.
Those then are the terms on which I, as a rabbi, in this article will engage it. Because as a theological document, it is profoundly flawed. God's design, quote, was the creation of two distinct and complementary sexes, male and female, the resolution states. Nevertheless, many have sought to normalize transgenderism and define gender according to one's self-perception apart from biological anatomy. After listing some of the ways in which society has done so, the resolution says, these cultural currents run counter to God's created order and violate the dignity of every human being. So you and I violate
the dignity of every What they don't know is that they really haven't read Genesis, and they really haven't dug deep into history, that people like us have been around forever, and as a matter of fact, we've held a lot of prestigious position in tribes, and we're trusted and all sorts of stuff. But for that reason, it concludes quote, we affirm God's design for gender as determined by biological sex and not by self-perception, unquote. And we oppose all efforts to validate transgender identity and so on. And who in the world are they to oppose anything? I mean, really.
I remember I was working with the Southern Baptists for a very long time, and when I transitioned that June, they adopted a policy that refuted transgenderism on all grounds, and they adopted it in their convention, and it became big mainstream news, and it was like, we hereby, delegitimize all transgender people and think that they're crazy, whatever. And it was like a real slap in the face, because here I was working with these people for so, like, 2 decades just about. And they like completely, anybody that was associated with Southern Baptist completely disconnected from me when I became transgender, or when they found out that I was transgender. They didn't talk to me. They didn't reach out to me. They just disassociated, and it was like as if I didn't even exist.
Or they're failing miserably because according to their God, they're supposed to love everyone. They're supposed to be kind. They're supposed to be accepting and not judgmental. And, frankly, it makes absolutely no sense to me, because what they're preaching and what their Jesus told them to do are two different things, altogether.
Well, let's focus on two important errors in that text. First, yes, in the Genesis story, God creates human beings of male and female sex. But the creation story says nothing about gender. Notice how the end of the resolution talks about God's design for gender as determined by biological sex. Of course, remember, again, 1956 was the first time they discovered DNA, chromosomes, and all that is like new recent findings. Where did that come from? What chapter and verse?
Remember, sex is not the same as gender. Definitionally, sex is about chromosomes. Gender is about cultural practices. Sex is what is between our legs. Gender is what's between our mind or our ears, whatever. My male sex means I can grow a beard. My male gender means it's socially acceptable for me to do so, but not in conservative society to wear high heels and makeup. Of course, there's nothing objectively male or female about shoes and clothes. They are aspects of gender, and they're socially constructed.
Now, just because the Genesis story is silent about gender doesn't mean that the Bible is. In fact, the Bible presents clear gender roles aligned with sex, in which women are subordinate to men. Wives, submit to your husbands as you do the Lord, Ephesians 5:22. Men purchase and own their multiple wives, may forcibly marry the widows of enemies they kill, and may hold concubines as additional sexual partners in addition to their wives. The story of Abraham and Sarah come to mind when he couldn't have a baby. When Sarah couldn't have a baby, he went and had sex with his slave,
right,
with Sarah's servant.
So is this what Tietzel means, the God's design for gender? Even if it is, what about those men and women who deviate from gender roles in the Bible, like patriarch Jacob, for example? Is clearly gender female in comparison with his twin brother Esau. Esau is hairy, Jacob is smooth. Is that Esau, is it?
Esau.
Esau is a hunter. Jacob stays in the tent, which is where women stay, and cooks. Esau is favored by his father, Jacob by his mom, and yet Jacob is the chosen one who becomes Israel, who fathers a nation.
Of course, Jacob didn't go on hormone therapy, but the way the Bible constructs his gender identity makes it very clear that, at least until his transformative nighttime wrestling match, he is gender nonconforming.
That's what I was saying. This has been around forever, this whole medicalization of it. It's almost like a thought-out, destructive plan to destroy people like us, if you think about it, because it's really damaging the health of people that have been around forever, because we've been around forever. But how do you get rid of something you don't want? You have them get rid of themselves.
Yeah.
you know. Likewise, Deborah the judge, who performed a male societal role, likewise the beautiful young David in his armored carrier relationships with Saul and Jonathan, 1 Samuel 16:12 and 1 Samuel 18:1 through 3. Likewise, the Apostle Paul, who rebelled against the most fundamental gender role of his time, fathering children by becoming celibate. Likewise, the pairs of female emissaries in the New Testament, Tritania or something, Tryphosa, Romans 16:2, the Ethodia and Syntyche, Philippines 4:1, who preach the gospel in ways usually reserved for men. On and on and on, the Bible presents heroic characters who vary from normative gender roles.
If the Bible is our guide, then God's design for gender is a gigantic rainbow of variation, not a black or white conformity with sex.
Second, the resolution argues that to normalize transgender would violate the dignity of every human being. In fact, the opposite is true. Societally, we recognize and affirm the dignity of every human being when we respect a profound sense of self-understanding echoed by science, culture, and history.
Really, there are only two options when it comes to transgender people. One is to listen to what they have to say. The other is to decide that they are so deeply mentally ill that they cannot be trusted to describe their own experiences.
The trouble is, the latter is simply incompatible with actually knowing anyone trans or even watching someone trans speak in the media. It's kind of willful blindness coupled with an outrageous dehumanization. After all, it's not just one or two people, it's hundreds of thousands of people articulately describing their experiences.
Moreover, the overwhelming consensus of scientists agrees with what trans people themselves say. When trans people are able to live as themselves, they are measurably, objectively happier, healthier, and safer.
And I wanted to add that those that are not are still dealing with a lot of childhood traumas, shame, and have to work through things that have to be really worked through for long periods of time when you can finally accept yourself for who you are and be able to express without shame and be happy. So to hold some kind of trans invalidating position is so counterfactual, countermoral, and counter-scientific that it begs the question of whether it's a position at all, or is it in fact a fear or prejudice. It certainly isn't respecting the human dignity of trans people.
Here is an alternative religious explanation. If we are to believe in God's design, we must look at what God has designed. In biblical text and most of life, sex is indeed male and female, and the vast majority of people, sex and gender align. I am biologically male, was assigned male at birth, identify as male, and mostly present as masculine.
For roughly 0.6% of people, however, gender and sex do not align, just as I know myself to be a man. Transgender people know and medical professionals confirm that their gender does not match their sex or their gender they were assigned at birth.
In the past, trans people, though not known as such, had a wide variety of social roles. In the West, most likely suffered through their gender dysphoria or identified as gay or lesbian or worked as cross-dressers or performers or sex workers living on the margins of society.
Others may have expressed their gender in other ways by being tomboys or sissies or male florists or female soldiers. For example, some lived according to their gender, hiding their anatomical sex their entire lives. A few fortunate ones, such as Queen Christina of Sweden, were able to live lives that look and recognize transgender today.
In some other cultures, the situation was different. In India, for example, Hijras are male-bodied people who dress as women, do not marry, and have defined and often stigmatized social roles, particularly at life cycle events. There are extensive records of African and Native American cultural roles held by third gender persons who often cross-dressed, held spiritual leadership roles, and were regarded as rare, special beings.
This is God's plan then, a spectrum of gender. So what do we do about it? Clearly, we must support trans people to choose life. Deuteronomy 30:19. Today, as transgender people have demanded their rights and recognition, and as medical science has evolved, a wide variety of options are available. Some opt for hormone therapy or gender confirmation surgeries of various types. Others do not pursue medical intervention but present, dress, speak, act according to their gender identity. Still, others find themselves somewhere in between and categories our society promotes, and identify as gender queer or somewhere along the non-binary gender spectrum.
For those of us who are not trans, we're called to listen rather than to dictate. We are called to open ourselves to the truth, not to our opinions. Love, after all, rejoices with the truth. 1 Corinthians 13:7.
Remember, being transgender isn't simply a feeling or a preference. It's a profound, often difficult process of self-understanding. A trans woman understands herself to be female just as much as I understand myself to be male. Usually, such self-understanding takes place together with mental health professionals, counselors, and doctors. It is a moral journey.
Neither the pain of gender dysphoria nor the joy of living authentically as one's true self are trivial matters. They are profoundly moral, religious ones.
On the one hand, if God loves human beings, then God cannot abide the pain of gender dysphoria. It is not real love to allow such harm to take place because love does not harm to its neighbor, Romans 13:10, and I cannot stand by while a society stigmatizes transgender people, causes them suffering, or creates a world in which transgender women, particularly women of color, continue to be assaulted and even murdered at shocking rates.
Whereas when I see my transgender friends living their lives as pastors, rabbis, artists, politicians, colleagues, performers, dads, moms, and ordinary human beings, and yes, I know trans folks who are all of those things, I see the wondrous diversity of God's many gendered faces. This diversity, not some oppressive and artificial monoculture, is how God, nature, and humanity flourish. Truly, the fruit of the Spirit is joy. Galatians 5:22.
Open your eyes, Eric Teasel. What's that? Numbers 22:31. The truth will set you free. John 8:32. God has far more expansive designs for gender than you seem able to yet acknowledge. So come learn the truth. Come meet some trans people. Talk to them, or better yet, listen to them with your ears and heart open. And that, I know we talked about it the other day when we did the little Sunday chat, but that brings to attention the Texan guy we met the weekend who was judgmental and thought that trans people just were doing what they did for attention, yet meeting us and seeing the love that we have for one another changed his view on trans people altogether.
I mean, when you see love, it changes you. I mean, when you get touched in a movie with a certain part that, it just really pierces you. It changes.
And that's what it's all about. And maybe we are here to help our family members, to help society learn what unconditional love is all about. You may not understand this. You may think we're crazy. We do crazy things. Transition, detransition, fight amongst our own community. We fight amongst our own self. We struggle on a daily basis. But, we're here to help humanity grow and accept things and realize that everything is not as black and white as you may think it is. And everything is not about boy, girl, man, female, or man and woman. There's a lot more to this reality that meets the eye, and understanding one another, understanding yourself, is very important for your spiritual growth.
It really is. It is imperative that we see that gender is a rainbow and that it isn't just some monoculture structured, dualistic type of approach. We have a beautiful, beautiful, plethora of diversity on this earth, and it's a shame that there are so many still out there that want to just castigate people.
And if by any chance, we are a byproduct of our childhood trauma, neurological impairment, self-hatred, you name it. then it is something, it is our path, it is our journey that we have to take to help heal ourselves. So why judge us? Why judge ourselves? We sometimes we don't understand nature of life, nature of things, and it's difficult. Life doesn't come with a manual, but even if it is a so-called mental condition or whatever we want to label it as, wouldn't it be wiser for society to be a little bit more compassionate, more understanding, and help us through these times of trouble that we're going through, from this confusion, whatever it is? Wouldn't it be more amicable for you to open your hearts in your minds and really try to love us and understand us instead of doing what you're doing, which is really only hurting yourself because you're damning your own spirit.
There's a lot of things. I mean, when I got older and graduated from college and took my first full-time job, I realized that I wasn't cut out to be a 9 to 5er, Monday through Friday, punch the time clock kind of person. And honestly, I don't understand how many of you do what you do with your lives and live your lives the way you do them. Like you get up at like the crack of dawn and you work your butt off, and then you have like maybe 2 weeks of vacation, and you're like slaves to your business and slaves to what you do. You're slaves to societal expectations of what you as a man should do or you as a woman should do, and a slave to child rearing, a slave to. So there are so many things that I don't understand. You don't understand us. We don't understand what you guys do a lot of times.
Bottom line is, we as a species, as humans that we are, need to coexist and need to learn to have a little bit more compassion, tolerance. Open up that part in your mind that you may have closed off because of the way you were raised to believe certain things. Open that part up and realize that it takes all kinds to make the world. Not everyone's like you. Not everyone's like me. And we all make mistakes. That's part of the human nature. But we need to learn to evolve, grow, forgive, and coexist in this beautiful blue planet.
And it's really not about understanding. That's a point I'm trying to make, is that, regardless of whether I understand you or you understand me, or you don't know why I chose the path that I chose and I don't understand the path that you chose, it's just a matter of respecting each other's decisions and learning, like you said, to coexist and to love each other regardless. Regardless.
Definitely. Anyway, last article for the evening. I'd like to talk about fitness, as it's a very integral and important part of our lives. The golden rules of fat loss, according to an expert. And this is something that I learned a lot about nutrition. I'm a certified nutrition consultant, master personal trainer, and occupational therapist. But health, fitness has been my life for a very long time. And I always had my own theory and my own program, the body transformation system that I created, and was always going against the norm of fitness. Fitness has always told you, you eat less, you work out harder, and you get there. So it's always making people feel like they're falling short and never achieving their goal because it's their fault.
Right.
And how do businesses do great? By doing that. Confusing. Right. The fitness industry, the nutritional industry is so confusing. People are told all sorts of stuff. But you found this article, and there's a lot of the stuff that I've been saying for a very long time regarding fat loss, So go ahead and get started.
Never run again. Lift more instead. Yes, I completely agree with that. Can getting fit really be that simple? We asked Sarah Chadwell, NASM certified personal trainer and natural bodybuilder, just how you could skip running and still look like a gym goddess. She told Bob Sugar, a magazine online, that there are more effective training practices to burn fat and build strength. You can cardio yourself to death and still have the same flat figure, said Chadwell. Or you can follow the golden rules of weight loss. Never run again and have a lean, sexy, curvaceous physique.
And you're definitely somebody who could relate with this article. We used to disagree a lot in the beginning when you and I started. I was trying to tell you that, and you were like, "Oh, I'm good running
I
thousands of
was like
miles."
convinced that cardio was my key.
Yeah, and that's like the kiss of the metabolic death. It eats away your muscle. The more muscle you lose, the slower your metabolism goes, and the more fat your body stores, and it's just a vicious cycle. Here are the golden rules of fat loss that Shadwell lives by. Train intensely. Anaerobic exercise reps up your metabolism and keeps your body in burn mode long after your workout is done. When done right, you can continue to burn hundreds of additional calories hours after the workout has ended. Here are Shadwell's premier anaerobic methods of training.
Heavy weightlifting to achieve serious muscle gain. And no, you will not bulk up. High intensity interval training, full body circuit workouts, a combination of the above.
And that works greatly. We've been doing that, and along with the intermittent fasting, which he doesn't talk about it yet. I think intermittent fasting is relatively new. I've been doing it for a long time. I ran into it. I started doing it, unexpectedly because that's what felt right. Shadwell added, "I like using a combination of exercise styles to be efficient in the gym. It gets the heart rate up and stops fat in its tracks. I've never been a fan of running, so I utilize other training methods to keep my body lean, strong, and still cardiovascularly fit." When we do the interval training, our hearts, it's like at the end of that 4 or 5 segment that we do, it's your heart's just like pounding, pounding, pounding
I'm
away.
sure as we get into it more, we're going to be doing even more intense workouts.
Yeah.
But number 2, strength training. Building and preserving muscle is key to weight loss since it helps you burn fat more efficiently and for longer periods of time. A person who is muscular burns more calories, even during resting periods, than densely muscled individuals. Less densely muscled individuals.
Number 3, clean eating. Your body should be treated like a Cadillac, meaning it needs super unleaded fuel to run correctly. If you only give it regular unleaded, it screws up the engine. The same goes for feeding your body. If you're constantly giving it junk food, it can't perform optimally. Eating good for you foods helps fuel the body, build muscles, and burns fat. There's absolutely no way to lose weight by neglecting these essential part of the equation. Abs are made in the kitchen.
Not at the gym.
Exactly. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. And animal products are acidic. They will demineralize you. They will become catabolic, although they appear, the bodybuilders eat a lot of steaks and chicken appearing to bulk up, but they're actually counterproductive for your body. In the long term, your body will rebel.
What happens to bodybuilders? A lot of them, after they stop doing the bodybuilding thing, what happens to their bodies? What do they look like?
They get fat, overweight.
They get pudgy, and you look at some of these like men that had some incredible physiques. After they stop, or when they're bulking up,
they get fat, and then they have to do the yo-yo dieting. Bulk up, slim down, bulk up. When you do this kind of stuff, you're looking clean, lean throughout the entire year. Your body then sets its center point, and you can keep it for the rest of your life.
And we stopped doing cardio. We were doing like a 10-minute, interval run burn thing, and between walking and running for 10 minutes, 12 minutes. And we realized that it's really not necessary.
It's counterproductive, because our interval training gets our heart rates up there. It gets our, it's like as soon as we're done, I just want to come home so we could start our refeeding. Because we go 16 hours without eating. So we want to bring that refeeding in.
I just think it's super, super exciting to know that when you do this kind of anaerobic exercise, which actually fuels your muscle, actually it doesn't fuel it, it tears it up in the gym, and the fueling part happens later.
Yeah.
But that it's actually burning calories after you work out for hours and hours and hours. You're like lying down, recovering, and you're still burning calories.
Oh, definitely. And that's the name of the game, because when you do cardio, you're burning fat at the moment, but then that's it. The body stops, and actually it's counterproductive. When you do weight training, you do interval training, and you do the intermittent fasting, your body becomes a fat burning machine.
And that's what I'm experiencing. Yeah. It's like
You're leaner than you've ever been.
I've
I mean,
never
we show
been,
the pictures.
yeah.
You know, pictures worth 1,000 words, and
And we're just starting.
Yeah.
You know, we're just like on the cusp of this whole thing. You know, I've finally bought into the whole concept of don't be afraid of lifting heavy. Don't be afraid of working your butt off in the gym and getting real results.
Yeah, well, I mean, why would any person want to shoot themselves in the foot, ruin their metabolism, get fatter as they get older, because they want to create a body type that is not within, you know, their biological, what do you call it? Makeup. Use what you got. I mean, do you know how many women, biologically, or cis women, would give to have, you know, be able, and they try and they try and they try, and poor things. It's like, let me go get a prescription for a testosterone patch or something so that you could, you know.
Yeah, and you know, trans women out there, you happen to have the kind of body that is able to take advantage of that fact that you were born with the ability to produce testosterone. And, you know, being able to do that will give you the physique that you're looking for, because more muscle doesn't mean that you're going to become more manly.
No,
it just means that you're going to be leaner, that you're going to have less fat on your body, that you're going to have more curves.
Healthier. You're going to be healthier, and you'll be stronger as you age. You won't get osteoporosis. Like, I have to work 10 times harder than you because I've got nothing. My body has no ovaries. I'm not producing anything. Luckily, I've been a very health conscious person for the past, 20 years of my life. And thanks to that, you know, I'm thriving. But if I were like the typical person, I'd be probably very ill right now.
Yeah.
And I don't let not having any gonads define my health, you know, so. And I won't go back on any type of synthetic hormones because I know the damage. And as you get older, these synthetic hormones create a greater risk for your health. And I want to be around for a very long time. So.
Oh, believe me, I want you to be around too for a very long time.
All right, so that's pretty much it. Sorry for the earlier interruption with the. It seems like our 4G works a heck of a lot better than although sometimes this works good. It's just whenever they, I don't know.
I know, it depends on how many people are
using it.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you please subscribe. I always forget to say this. I watch other videos and other channels, and I don't like to, you know, push things, but please subscribe, share the videos. If you have any topics that you want us to discuss, please email us at whatsupwiththecummings@gmail.com. And we do have donation button on our blog page. So if you like what we're doing and like to contribute, we'd be more than grateful. No small amount is too small. We also sell stuff like CDs and books and things of that nature. It's on the blog. I think I have the blog linked on the description area. So if any of you want me to put you on a nutritional fitness plan, you can contact me and we'll work something out. You know, never turn anyone away because of low funds. I always try to work with my clients on a sliding scale. So I'm more than happy to help you.
If you need any nutritional help, how to, you know, cook clean, healthy foods. I mean, this man can make anything, any dish healthy, anything. You know.
And put you on the right program and motivate you, and, you know, be your support system via phone, Skype, email, whatever it is. So I never really. Today I was like, I never tell people to subscribe. I never tell people, you know, and it's like, I've been doing this since 2012, and you know, I'm the worst selling person. I just do what I do because I enjoy it and I love it. But yeah, so, all right, guys, we love you, but remember to always love yourselves too. Good night.